I'm Sanjana. I'm the J and J Fireside Chat Coordinator, and I'm here with Pat for another Fireside Chat. Thank you so much, Pat, for joining us.
Thanks to be here, Sanjana.
All right. So first, tell us about your educational and professional backgrounds and the path that you took to get to where you are today.
Sure. Well, I did my undergraduate at Seton Hall University. At the time I was going to school, Seton Hall was considered to have the best business school in the state of New Jersey. And I wanted to stay in New Jersey because I was working my way through college. Back then, scholarships were not as prevalent as they are today. Loans were not as prevalent as they are today. So I wound up working my way through school. I actually ran a McDonald's. I was a manager of a McDonald's restaurant through college. And that was a great experience. I didn't realize it at the time, but it really helped me start my career. After I graduated Seton Hall, I went into the business world in a operations capacity. My undergraduate degree was in management, business management. And I have to say that at a very early age, I sort of started to chart out for myself the career path I wanted. And right from the beginning, I wanted to run a business, to be a CEO of a company. And then what I did is I really spent time just charting a roadmap of what that would be like, and what positions I would need to hold to get there. So back when I was young, the best way to get to the C-suite, to the CEO job, was through the finance area. So I decided, okay, then my career needs to take a turn in finance. I moved into the finance area. I started with Allstate Insurance Company. I was in their financial planning and analysis department. And then decided, well, what would be helpful would be also to get an MBA in finance, sort of complement my undergraduate degree. And so I went and got my MBA at Fairleigh Dickinson, and then just started down my path and decided at some point with Allstate, well, I was working in a regional operation, but would be helpful to, again, my long-term career aspirations would be to be in a much larger home office environment. So I left Allstate to go to CNA Insurance Company. And after a couple of years there, I thought, well, you know what? I need to broaden myself outside of insurance. That was a great foundation, but I wanted to be more horizontal in my learnings. So I wound up with a consumer finance company called Beneficial Finance, and spent a good deal of my career through them. Then eventually Household International, which was the largest consumer finance company in the United States. And then ultimately with HSBC, who wound up acquiring Household Finance. And my career went from finance head, chief financial officer, to chief executive officer of businesses within Household International and ultimately HSBC, where ultimately I became a group CEO. So I had businesses that I ran underneath me that had their CEOs. So it was a great experience. And I think my strongest advice to young people is, for much as you can think about your career over a long period of time and create what I would call a career roadmap to get there, and then stay true to that. I mean, things might change along the way, but I was pretty true to the fact that I realized the finance route was the best way for me to get where I wanted to be. And then I structured my education and I structured my career path around finance that ultimately paid off for me.
Wow, that's incredible. And I think the idea of a career roadmap is really cool, just kind of stopping and taking a breath and really reevaluating, or just, initially evaluating your goals and where you want to be and what you want to do, and just taking that time. I think that's super important. And in this super fast-paced world, it's easy to just kind of let that go and just go about life without really stopping and thinking about what you truly want to do. So I really like that idea of the roadmap, and I'm definitely going to think about it as I go through my career.
Good.
All right. So my next question is, did you have any significant extracurricular experiences in high school or college that you felt really helped you later on in your career?
I think, that helped me really. I don't think anything, I can't think of anything that I did in high school and college that helped me significantly in my career, but I did take mostly leadership positions in the clubs and organizations that I was involved in at high school level and in college level, that I do think, just helped to maybe improve my leadership skills to a degree. And from that standpoint, maybe that was helpful to me, and helped me to better project myself, to be better engaged with people, And also, the whole aspect of working in teams was important. And, I learned that at a young age. Interpersonal skills do come into play. So the more you're interactive and involved in clubs and organizations and sports, I think the more you hone your interpersonal skills, and interpersonal skills are incredibly important when you go into the business world, whatever it is you want to do, right? Interacting with people, relating to people. It's just so critical. I mean, I've met students, I've worked with folks that have come from the best universities, Harvard, Ivy League schools, that had horrible interpersonal skills and crashed and burned in a business environment because they couldn't relate to people. So those kinds of things maybe did transition for me between college and my ultimate work experience.
Yeah, I think that's so important, teamwork, communication, interpersonal skills, like these are all skills that aren't really taught in a classroom setting. So the best way to really acquire them and thrive and really learn about them is through clubs and organizations and having those leadership positions, as you mentioned, and even just being involved however you can. So I think that's really important that you brought up. And I'm sure the students can relate, listening in. I'm sure they're part of clubs or organizations or might be thinking of all that. So I highly recommend joining. Pat recommends it, as we heard. So you'll definitely gain a lot out of it.
Good, good. That sounds great.
All right. So my last question is, what advice would you give to young people who will be embarking on their professional lives soon?
Wow, that's a great question. Yeah, so what would I tell my 21-year-old self, I guess, right? Or maybe a little bit younger, a little bit older. I have so I left HSBC about 8 years ago, and I wanted to do a few different things. One was to stay involved on the corporate side. So I'm on the board of directors of a public company. I've done some consulting on the side, but the other thing I wanted to do was give back to the universities that really helped me, and Fairleigh Dickinson being one. So now I'm a full-time professor and executive in residence for the wealth management program at Fairleigh Dickinson. So I do teach in the classroom with students, and I close all my classes at the end of the semester with a quote that I pass on to them that I think is really applicable to young students as well. And the quote goes something like this: when you look back on your career, you should never regret the things that you've done, but you might regret the things you haven't done. So take advantage of every opportunity. And that's probably what I've stressed the greatest to young people today, because there are so many opportunities that young people possess that I didn't have when I was starting out my business career after college. Just the fact that it's so much more of an international, interconnected world today, a global economy. But when I started out, it really was not that. It was a domestic economy just in the United States. So I think there's huge opportunities for students to be able to do a tremendous amount. When you graduate, your first job should be all about, you should be a sponge. It should be all about learning, all about gaining an understanding of the work that you're doing, the technical aspects of what you're doing. Take on the assignments that nobody wants to do, because that's the way to get yourself noticed. Because if you get yourself noticed, it's the first step for you to be handpicked by someone more senior that puts you someplace else. So as much as you can gain visibility, as much as you can interact with folks, as much as you can use those interpersonal skills, I do think that that's tremendously helpful to you as your career progresses. The other thing I would say too is to keep an open mind, have that career path, that career roadmap, as I mentioned earlier, and have it take its course. When you think of your career of 40, 50, potentially even 60 years, be a little bit patient to maybe spend a little bit more time on a job that you're in that hopefully better sets you up for the next job. And it's okay to move from one company to the next and take a lateral move that may not necessarily be more money, but it's a different organization. So I go back when I left my first job at Allstate in a regional job, and I went to my second job, CNA, in a home office job. It was a lateral move for me. But had I not taken that, I would not have gotten my third job with Beneficial Finance, who was looking for people that worked in a home office environment. So don't necessarily think about moving from one job to the next, where it's really going to be a big step up. You got to have more money, you have the more responsibility. It's great if you could do that, but sometimes lateral moves have you move that much more quickly into the next job. So you want to consider that as well. Hard work pays off. Very few people win the lottery. So it's all about working hard. It's all about engaging and making an impact. I think that's hugely, hugely important. Lastly, I would say, think as if when you're working at any company, think as if you're the owner of the company. So as the owner of the company, what would you be expecting employees to do? Meaning that you'd be making recommendations on how you could reduce expenses. You might be making recommendations on how you could better service customers, how you could grow revenues. Those are the kinds of things that owners would do. And if you can make those kinds of requests or those kinds of suggestions and observations to your management, that's another great way for you to be able to advance and move up. That's so critical to today's environment, because it's a more aggressive environment, a more competitive environment, I think, today than it was when I was in school as well. The other point that I would say, when you're thinking about different ways that you can make an impact, I had one of my first bosses said to me, make my job easier. If you can make my job easier, you're golden. So think about ways that you can make your first boss's job easier. Take work off their desk, go into their office. How can I help you? And do more than what's required, right? Because those are the people that get ahead. Those are the people that get the promotions. Those are the people that move up in an organization. Those are the people that are defining themselves. They're making a difference. They're more visible. All those kinds are super important. So it does all get back to hard work. It does all get back to interpersonal skills. It does all get back to being engaged, learning on the job in the first job. Michael Bloomberg, who you might know, certainly started a great company, was the mayor of New York, had a saying that the only time an employer really looks at the school that you graduated from is your first assignment. And then after that, it's all about your experiences. And I think that's really true. When I used to look at resumes at very senior people I'd be bringing into my company, rarely looked at where they went to school, right? Because their career was established. They could have been 10 years out, 15 years out, even 5 years out. It's all about the work experiences. So make sure you keep the work experiences moving forward. Use LinkedIn, keep yourself fresh on LinkedIn, network, because largely that's how you're going to find a job. Every career path I took was a networking opportunity. So always stay engaged, always be involved. And I'm sure you'll have tons more opportunities than I had when I started my career.
That was such amazing advice. I cannot thank you enough for that, especially those points about, working at a company and thinking in the owner or CEO's shoes. Like, that is probably the best piece of advice I've gotten in a while. So
Great.
thank you so much for that. I'm definitely going to keep that in mind. And I'm sure the students will get a lot out of the session overall. It was a great session. You gave some great insights. So thank you so much again, Pat, for joining us.
Sanjay, thank you so much. It was great meeting you, and have a great summer. And good luck in the fall at Drexel. I'm sure you'll do well.
Thank you so much.
Have a great day.